Good afternoon, and welcome to the GreenRoc Mining PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll, and I'd now like to hand you over to Stefan Bernstein, CEO. Good afternoon, to you, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for attending this presentation today. I've been looking forward to be able to present you with the result of the preliminary economic assessment of our Amitog project in Greenland, which I will do with this presentation. And I'll be also happy to receive questions that I'll try my best to answer after this presentation. So in the presentation, you will see there's a few slides that some of you may have seen before, but I think it's important also to be able to fill in some potential newcomers here about what the project is about. So Amitog Graphite Project is GreenRoc's flagship project. It's situated in the southern tip of Greenland, and the project is about reopening a world-class graphite mine for production of anode material, which is an important component in EV batteries, as I will discuss in a moment. So I'll jump a couple of slides here with disclaimer. Just a few words about the company. We have 3 projects in Greenland, 2 projects in North Greenland, an iron ore project and a titanium sands project, and then the most important one, the Amitog Graphite Project in South Greenland. Our ticker is GROC, and we have about a little bit less than 150 million shares issued, which currently trades at a price of about 4.5p. And you can see the major shareholders here on the table. So in the presentation here, I will first speak a few words about the graphite market itself, which is of course important as we are addressing the battery market, and then something also about how the Amitog Graphite Project sits in the supply chain in general, and then some details about the Amitog Graphite Project itself, and particularly then leading into the results of the preliminary economic assessment, and then on to the work plans for the coming time. So this hasn't changed, this slide, showing how important graphite is with regard to the energy transition. Is one of the most important components in EV batteries, making up more than a fifth of the weight of an EV battery. And China produces more than 70% of world's graphite at the moment, and process nearly 100% of the graphite that goes into the EV batteries as anode material. So that processing is important because the graphite that is taken out of the ground as flake, natural flake graphite, needs to undergo a process of spheronization and purification and coating in order to make the anode material that goes into the batteries, which you can see on the right hand side panel here, if you can see my cursor. About a kilogram of coated spherical purified graphite, CSPG, goes into these batteries per kilowatt hour. So that means a average electric car contains about 60-70 kilograms of spherical graphite. And the market is obviously growing. There's nearly 40 so-called gigafactories that produce these batteries for the EVs underway in Europe that will be in production by 2030. and nearly 30 gigafactories in North America. And therefore, we see a demand which is rapidly rising from about 1 million tons of graphite being needed this year to about 4 million tons by 2033. That is in only 10 years' time. Likewise, we see a forecasted price increase, which is also very significant. You see in this middle panel here, forecasted by Fastmarkets, that shows a hefty increase in some of the anode material over the coming years. A similar increase is expected to be seen for the graphite flakes. So certainly a strong market demand. Benchmark Mineral Intelligence has estimated that about 100 new mines need to come on stream and in production by 2035 in order to fulfill the demands from the world production of batteries, going both into electric cars but also into energy storage systems, which will take up about 10% of the market demand in the years to come. Given China's dominance, there was a very worrying news the other day here that China, following similar news for other raw materials, is set to impose a export restriction on graphite. Not all graphite, but specifically graphite that goes into batteries. So battery-grade graphite of various qualities, covering both natural or spherical graphite from natural flake graphite, purified flake graphite, and also synthetic graphite. Of course, we don't know exactly what is behind this, but it's certainly something that can be seen as a potential barrier for European and North American gigafactories to receive the all-important anode material for future production of batteries. It stresses, of course, also the need to secure the supply chains, and in that respect, GreenRoc mining plays an important role because we have this world-class asset in Greenland, situated geographically midway between North America and Europe, and we have very high quality graphite present that we can supply the market with. So where we are in the supply chain, this shows our position with the whole supply chain from mining through concentration, spheronization, purification, coating into serving as anode material for the battery production. The first two links there, the mining and concentration to graphite concentrate, will take place in Greenland from our Amitsoq project. But we are also planning to take part in the midstream supply chain, namely by setting up a capacity to process the graphite concentrate into anode-ready material. More about that in a moment. First of all, a few slides about the Amitsoq project. It was an operating mine about 100 years ago, testifying to the high quality of the graphite ore then, or there, and also signaling the viability of undertaking a mining operation in this part of Greenland. In the right-hand side satellite image, you can see the outline of our licenses. The blue one is the one that contains the Amitsoq mine that you can see with the red diamond. It is situated about 20 kilometers northeast of the Nanortalik town, which is the southernmost town in Greenland. It was recently enlarged to also contain a couple of lakes and land areas to the west of the Amitsoq fjord, namely in this area over here, where that is perspective also for graphite, but also give us access to potentially important infrastructure. Right, and you can also see with various red dots around here that signals the occurrences of other graphite deposits or mineralizations that we have taken samples of and analyzed. And they common with these is that they return analysis between 15 and up to 30% graphite. Some of them are fairly large in extent. So what we are really sitting on here is a world-class graphite district that we are slowly developing in the sense that we are concentrating now on the Ametok deposit, but there's certainly room for expansion in the future. We have done a fair amount of sampling on the Galag deposit just across the fjord, which seems to be a similar size of the Ametok deposit. So we have conducted 2 drill phases, and on the basis of that, we have defined a mineral resource. And in short, there are 2 main ore bodies. This is looking at Ametok Island from the west towards the east. You can see 2 main ore bodies dipping towards you. The lower one is the lower graphite layer in red, and then above that is the upper graphite layer in yellow. The lower graphite layer is up to 20 meters thick, with an average of about 21% graphite across, and there's very little dilution of host rock. You go directly from a wall rock that contains about 0% graphite into the full 20-something% graphite in the ore body. So there's no real dilution factor. And also important is to say here that the deposit, as drilled now, is open in 3 directions. So there's certainly room for further extending the discovery and therefore the mineral resources. So based on those 2 drilling phases, we have arrived at a JORC-compliant resource given here in the table, with a total of 23 million tons at more than 20% graphite. And you can see how we rank across the field of projects under development in the panel here. Excuse me. In the green dots, you see the average grade of the ore, and the bars signal the value of the company, the enterprise value, per ton of contained graphite. As you can see, we are the lowest amongst the lowest valued companies compared to the amount of graphite we have in the ground. But also in terms of the actual numbers, we are on the market cap here is about 6 million. So there's a huge range up to several $100 million across these companies. It just shows you how undervalued GreenRoc mining is, and therefore there's certainly room for a very significant upside here. So on to the result of the preliminary economic assessment, which we just recently published. It was a quite serious undertaking carried out by SLR consultancy company. So it's an independent research, you could say. And it contains a lot of details about the mining plans and how we're going to treat the tailings and other things. I'll get on to that in a moment. The key metrics here is that if we take a realistic discount rate of 8%, we have an NPV, net present value, pre-tax of $235 million, and after-tax NPV also at 8% discount of about $179 million. and the internal rate of return is 31% pre-tax and nearly 27% after tax. So quite healthy numbers. This is based on a nominal mining rate of about 400,000 tons per year. The initial capital cost has been calculated at about $131 million. Now that includes also a 25% contingency, so that is translated into $26 million of contingency. So we feel that this is a fairly robust and conservative number. The average operating cost is set at $121 per ton of milled ore. And that does include shipping, so that is including the cost of bringing eventually the concentrate right to where the customer sits at, or at least can transport it further from a port in either Northern Europe or North America. Yes, other important metrics is, of course, the net revenue annual of about nearly $90 million throughout a 22-year mine life. The payback period is estimated to be about 4 years after production start, but of course that's also dependent on particularly the capex here, and we expect that further research here will hopefully reduce the capex even further, although the 131 million is already a pretty good and low number. So we're quite happy with this. Obviously, it shows that certainly mining at Amitog can be a economically feasible undertaking, not mentioning the potential upside that might be provided from also processing this graphite concentrate into anode-ready material. I'll get onto that in a second. So the mining method is a drift and fill method, which is a relatively simple way of mining. There's a central decline that gives access to various levels of the ore body. There's a sketch here that shows how the ore body is attacked by several horizontal levels that you can drive the machinery in and then take out the ore. Every time there's a stope that has been removed, it's going to be filled with tailings mixed with concrete as a so-called backfill method. The mining takes place from about 10 meters above sea level to a level of minus 320 meters, that is below sea level. The mine plan presently only considers the lower graphite layer. It has a slightly higher graphite content or concentration than the upper graphite layer, but it just shows the robustness of the mining plan here. We leave the upper graphite layer for either later expansion or extending the mine life. And yes, I'll go on. And a few of the details here is a standard set of crushing here with 2 crushers and 3 ball mills. It's really a simple setup. It's basically a standard mining technique. We expect that we can take advantage of some recent developments on the processing front here, particularly in terms of the flotation devices, which may likely reduce further the costs and also the energy consumptions for the processing to graphite concentrate. There's a backfill paste plant that we'll be putting in on site here that will consume up to 86% of all the tailings. That is, in order to carry out the mining process here, you actually need to take the tailings, mix it with concrete and put it back in. That kind of makes the floor for the continuing mining, which is great because that means that only 14% minimum 14% of the tailings that are produced need to go to a tailings storage facility, which is really, really small number. That means also, of course, that we will save on transportation costs, and also it's good for the environment because the tailings can simply be used to fill the void, so to speak, after we're taking out the ore, and therefore in the future it will be stored by the mountain. We're looking at several options for tailings storage facility. One of them is this nearby lake, only 3 kilometers across the fjord, where there's access. It's only at 40 meters elevation, so a short uphill drive. And as I said, it's only 14% of the tailings that need to go to tailings storage in the lake. So it's a very small number of material that needs to be moved. The staffing here, about 45 crew will be on site at any one time, plus 19 support staff. They will probably be hosted in Nanortalik, while the crew, of course, underground will be living at Amitsoq. We expect also to have a barge transport, frequent barging between Amitsoq and Nanortalik, both with provisions, of course, but also going back with graphite concentrate. And then onward shipment of graphite concentrate would take place from Nanortalik Harbour to destination ports. And in that way, when we save ourselves from building a big, expensive port at Amitsoq, and of course, make use of existing infrastructure. So that is a mine we are developing in Greenland. The next chain in the supply chain is the processing, which is an important undertaking because presently we will have to ship our graphite concentrate to China. That's of course not a viable solution. So there are several other that are planning to set up production or processing capacity in Europe, but we believe that we are also fast-tracking this processing plant because we recently started a feasibility study that will make for a business case for setting up such production and assess, of course, the economic potential. First of all, I have to say that we've already shown that the graphite that we can take out of the ground at Amitsoq is really well suited to make anode material. That has been proven by some test work, lab scale test work at ProGraphite in Germany. We're now working on this feasibility study where we are looking at all of the stages from taking the graphite concentrate through micronization, classification, dedusting, spheronization, purification, and coating onto the final anode material. We need to, of course, determine what kind of processing units that we will employ and also the purification techniques and so on, the cost of those, maintenance cost, establishment cost, and a lot of these variables that go into the feasibility study. So we understand exactly how profitable such an undertaking will be and also where will be the best sites for setting up such a plant. In order to undertake this, we have received a grant of about 250,000 pounds from the Advanced Propulsion Centre. And the feasibility study started in September and will be concluded by May next year. And it is conducted with the partners Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, SLR, ProGraphite, and Decision Risk Analytics. So we're confident that this is going to provide further upside to our Amitsoq project. Exactly how much we'll see in some months, but the price increase, the value increase is very significant when you go from graphite concentrate to anode-ready material. So we have taken or are taking having several discussions with industry partners. They range between car manufacturers, battery companies, also companies that are engaged in chemical and engineering undertakings, raw material traders, government agencies, both in Europe, in North America, and in Japan. There's a lot of interest for our project, and I can see the news about the potential restrictions that China may pose on the graphite export has certainly also spurred more and higher interest from these various entities. We have been requested by several potential off-takers to supply samples of our graphite material from Amitsoq. We have only up to now been able to provide one of them with the material to have it tested by their own labs, and it's come out to be very positive. It fulfills all the requirements from their side, and they're certainly interested in going to the next steps of receiving material and finally, of course, entering at some point down the road here into a proper certification process. I can talk about that in a minute, also what that implies. I've shown this slide before, just stressing again, excuse me, the proximity of Amitsoq project to Northern Europe, but certainly also to North America, where you basically only have to add another day of sailing to reach port of industrial sites in the northeastern US. Excuse me, my voice is a little rough. Right. And then something about the likelihood that we'll get to mine this. Of course, we are in jurisdictions that being part of Europe in a sense, culturally at least, there's often the worry that there's too much local opposition that you will actually get to mine your deposit. And this is not the case for Greenland. Greenland is very mining friendly. Obviously, we have to fulfill all the requirements in terms of like environmental control and other things. But as long as we do that, then we are very welcome. And there's also a lot of support from the local communities. And we are on track with the environmental and the social impact assessments we are undertaking at the moment. They take time, so they were initiated last year, and they will be completed by next year. I've shown this again just to illustrate that mining in South Greenland is by no means an unviable undertaking. It's been done before, and in fact, our neighbor next door is Nalunaq, who's setting or reopening the gold mine just across the fjord, and it's an integral part, you could say, of South Greenland history. Next week, I'll be traveling to Greenland to have meetings both with the government in Nuuk. We'll be meeting with the commune and the mayor in Qaqortoq, South Greenland commune. And I'll also, very importantly, meet again with the people in Nanortalik, discuss with them and describe where we are, what our plans are, and so on. So they are kept well informed, and I hear also about what their opinions are. We have support from the European Raw Materials Alliance and also from the EU thereby, that we expect or hope for will also materialize in some more tangible support in the future. And then finally, this is a roadmap that shows you where we are with regard to development. There are two roads here. One is the development of the production of graphite concentrate from the Amitsoq mine. The lower one is the setting up of this spheronization or anode material plant, processing plant. The white text shows you work program items that have not been started yet, and the green ones are either accomplished or ongoing. So, of course, there's a lot of work to be done in the coming years, but I think that we are in a perfect position to undertake this work, particularly on the background of the recent development in terms of what the potential threats to the supply chain, but certainly also in terms of the increasing interest that we see from potential business partners, industrial partners, and also off-takers about the way that they see Amitsoq could be strengthening their business. So I think the main milestones for the coming year here will be concluding the environmental and social impact assessments at Amitsoq, and then that will lead on to the exploitation application that we will submit next year. We'll also start the PFS that we hope will be concluded by end of next year. That hinges a bit on being able to conduct a bit more work at Amitsoq. We need some geotechnical drilling, and we also like to uplift the current a little bit of the current inferred resource to a higher category, perhaps also extending the inferred resource. The feasibility study for the desalination plant will be done, and we are hopeful also that we will be engaging a business partner here, that we can, together with that partner, can set up a pilot processing plant so that we can start the quite lengthy process it is to have our graphite anode material being a certified material that would attract the high prices on the battery market. More about that later. So with this last slide, I'll just stress that we are on track with getting into production by 2027 with the mine in Greenland, and at that time, where the first shipment goes out of Greenland with graphite concentrate, that we have a spheronization plant set up somewhere in northern Europe. Could be Norway, could be northern Scotland, could even be in Denmark. It could also be another one in eastern United States, ready to go on with the processing to anode-ready material. So thank you for listening in today, and after this, I will go on to the questions.
Perfect, Stefan. Thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while Stefan takes a few moments to review those questions that have been submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Stefan, as you know, we received a number of pre-submitted questions and we received a number of questions throughout today's live presentation. If I could just ask you to read out those questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, I'll pick up from you at the end.
Yes, there's indeed a lot of questions. Thank you for that. Yes, okay. I'll start with those pre-asked questions that I have in front of me. First of all, my question is, with Amitsoq taking all the limelight, will the other Greenland projects be sold, especially with Blue Jay downgraded ilmenite project in Dundas? Is there a future for the Black Sands project? Well, right, Amitsoq rightly takes the limelight. That is certainly the most promising project. I also firmly believe that it is a project that will be delivering the most value in the shortest possible time for all of our investors. So that's, of course, why we put so much emphasis on that. There is certainly some potential reward also from following the other projects. I think, though, that we have to guard our resources, financial resources, of course, very carefully. Also, time we're spending, particularly with the latest development in North Greenland. Blue Jay have had to reconsider their project and say that it's no longer viable as an economic standalone project, probably mostly because it's too small. Therefore, there might actually be some upside in considering whether there could be something in conjunction with Blue Jay. That's something that, could possibly be discussed. Obviously, it is a big combined. The stretches of sand available there is huge. So I wouldn't rule out that somebody would come in and discuss with us and discuss with Blue Jay and perhaps would take it over. I think that probably what we would be seeking, because we don't at the moment want to prioritize that over Amitsoq. I can also say, answering another question down the list here, that we have now concluded the test work that was kind of missing for being able to finalize the competent persons report on TPS. And that will now be written up and is due later this year. It will be provided before Christmas, we were promised by the Australian competent persons company. So next question, how much support has been provided to GreenRoc by the EU to date, and how much has been applied for and awaiting a decision, both direct grants and subsidized loans? So short answer to that is none. It's a little bit disappointing. It's a huge disappointment, really, up to now, that there's been so much talk from the EU side, frankly, without too much action. But on the other hand, things do take time, particularly when you have 27 member states that need to agree on everything. I think it's a tremendous accomplishment that the Critical Raw Materials Act was passed the European Parliament with overwhelming majority early this fall. It's set to be finally approved in December, and after that, the EU has basically an obligation to support so-called strategic projects. And that is really important and raises some expectations, of course, also from our side, because with the support letter we received from the European Raw Materials Alliance, we expect certainly that we qualify as a strategic project. And in fact, we have also been given some indications that it is indeed the case. And strategic projects, we're not looking into another multiple month, year kind of period where these projects need to qualify. The decision has to be taken within 2 months. So I have high expectations that in next year that the EU actually will provide some form of economic support. And certainly with regard to eventual funding of the capital expenses, for instance, here, $130 million US dollars, that is certainly something where the European Investment Bank would be interested in coming in, and probably also very competitive interest rates, of course. So that's what I would expect from the EU. And that also answers another question, how we're going to fund the capital expense or the construction of the mine. Yes, so here the PEA assumes a graphite price of $1,250 per ton. What price would spheronized graphite coming out of your processing plant in Europe command? Were you to build a processing plant, what impact might this have of project NPV8? Obviously, we will have to wait and see what the feasibility study shows on the spheronization plant or processing plant. There's a fairly substantial value increase, I would say up to about 3 times that of the graphite concentrate itself. The processing is relatively energy intensive, so this is why we are planning to set up the processing plant, a place where energy prices are low. I think that all the forecasts that we are seeing have very increased price for anode-ready material that is ferronized graphite. So I think is bound to have a very positive impact on our NPV. But of course, I can't say any numbers until the feasibility study is complete. How close are you to securing an off-taker for your graphite? Weeks, months, years? What more information do they need that they haven't got already? At this point in time, the off-takers are just looking at potential suppliers of spheronized graphite or battery anode material. And they can buy that on the market. Therefore, what they're looking for is a supplier that has gone through all the stages of certification and can actually provide you with proven quality material. The certification process is quite lengthy. It takes up to 2 years, and it has a A, B, and C component that increases volume every time you have to deliver to the potential off-taker. So it's not only a lengthy, it's also a quite costly process. But of course, once you're through with that, then the whole world opens, because then you can demonstrate that you do have a product that meets the various requirements. So the answer is it takes years, but then I think that it's important here to realize that that is just the situation that we see now. The battery companies are now starting to look also at projects that are earlier stages, such as ours, because they realize that the only place that they can currently buy the anode-ready material is from Chinese companies. And some of them have already been banned of buying such material. So I think it's very likely that some of these companies will actually start actively working together with companies like us, GreenRoc Mining, developing this capacity, or at least helping out with the certification process. There's a very good one here. GreenRoc has limited cash. I challenge your strategy of raising a few £100,000 on an ad hoc basis. Why are you doing this? You need a cash runway of at least 2 years to deliver PFS and get to the point of making an investment decision and raising mine capex. What is stopping you raising the millions that this will require? You appear to have a good story. Yes, we do have a very good story. Unfortunately, graphite is not the flavor of the month. It hasn't been for a while. It's typical when you see, when you attend conferences and hear about people talking about battery raw materials. If they do mention graphite at all, it's always mentioned at the end. Again, I think that's going to change now because of the uncertainties that China's dominance has introduced on the supply chains. It's simply a matter of capital cost. If we were to raise, it'll be great to have £4 million in the bank. Then we can go out and do everything we need to now. But with a market cap of 6.5 million, it's just not viable to raise that amount. So I think what we will do is to keep speaking to groups that has a long-term interest in us and can see that by funding us a bit of it at a time allows us to grow. these companies or investment institutions, they're not interested in taking over the company. They like to keep the expertise within the company and fund sequentially. So I think that might be one of the routes that we'll be going. Other routes is, of course, to look at the parallel listings, either in Scandinavia or, as one suggested here, TSX. Those are certainly also possibilities, and we'll explore every opportunity that arises here to make that capital available for developing our project. But otherwise, I fully agree. We do need particularly like cornerstone investors that are in for the duration of this project until we have a positive cash flow. So what will be the key items of news flow over the next 12 months? First of all, and I think that's a very important one, is the final feasibility study on this spheronization plant. It's going to be similar to a PFS on a mining project. So only a little bit more work, we can take it on to a DFS that we can then conduct in 25. So the feasibility study next year in May on the spheronization plant, May, June. Then also next year we have the environmental impact assessment complete. We have completed the social impact assessment. We have a approved project description and plan approved by the Greenland authorities that will lead on to a successful impact benefit agreement, probably in the early fall next year, and then we'll have filing our application for exploitation permit also in the fall next year. In order to undertake the pre-feasibility study on the Amatok mine, we need to undertake a bit of geotechnical drilling, also have a survey on the underground mine workings and other things that all go into the PFS that we're expecting to embark on in the fall of 24. Those are just some of them. We also have further test work being carried out now. We just sent a small sample, 160 kilograms, to FL Smith in the United States for testing some of the new flotation devices there that could significantly also decrease our operating expenses. Yes, good. Next question here. How many car batteries does 77,000 tons per year make, which is the production of graphite concentrate? What % of annual UK and European EV demand will this satisfy? So European EV demand, so this will roughly give us enough graphite to produce 1 million, 1.5 million, thereabout, electric vehicles per year, which amounts to about 10% of the European electric car production in about 5-10 years' time. We don't see a lot of market response to the RNS. Why is that? That's I don't know whether it's $1 million question. I really like the answer to that. It doesn't matter what good news we publish. The market doesn't really seem to be recognizing us. It's not a complaint. It's simply just an observation. I think it's something that is going to change. If you look at the market cap on the graph that I showed you before of other companies, peer companies, they have, even for smaller deposits, for deposits that are situated in difficult places, troublesome jurisdictions, low grades and so forth, they often have market caps that are a lot higher than ours. So what is common with those is that they have been marketing their project for a lot longer time, many of them for over 10 years, whereas we just listed, 2 years ago. So I think it will come, it will change, and it's going to change upwards, helped also by the market sentiment. The indications that, for instance, first of all, the demands in the market, but certainly also the Chinese restrictions on graphite export. What potential is there to increase the resource tonnage and the contained graphite tonnage? Looking for a rough order magnitude, I'd say, okay, this is just guesswork, of course, because we don't know, we haven't drilled yet, but I would say the geological information that we have suggests that particular down dip, these ore bodies continue for at least the same distance. So, 1.5 to 2 times the size, if not more. And then we have all the satellite deposits around that we could also develop. And once we have the capacity and infrastructure in place, there's nothing really that hinders us for slowly increasing production by taking some of these satellite deposits into production. Sorry, that was the wrong button. What can you do to increase productivity about 77,000 tons of concentrate per year? That's something that we certainly will assess in the pre-feasibility study, the PFS. Now we know approximately what it takes to get it to this production rate. I think it's something that we can achieve by a variety of measures. I think presently the capacity of some of the ore treatment facilities actually are higher than just what we are looking at here. So we could potentially increase the mining rate without changing very much in terms of the infrastructure. But of course, there's a threshold at some point. If you want to increase it by 50%, you're looking at a different plant or have to add certain other units. So all of these are pretty similar. I read that there are 3,000 junior mining companies and fewer than 50 major miners. The seniors are currently swimming in cash, whereas the juniors are starving due to a complete lack of investor interest in the sector. Thank you for attending today, by the way. Again, there is some interest there. Is there any interest from the senior miners in what GREENROC is doing? And we've been talking to quite a few of the senior mining companies. They commonly regard graphite as being a niche commodity and therefore not being particularly interested. They have their strategies that are set. Often these strategies stretch out, reach out into the next 10 years or even longer. However, so presently I would say no, they're not interested. But then on the other hand, a few months or a couple of years back, none of the majors were interested in lithium either. But now they can see it's actually a profitable undertaking to mine and explore for lithium. So certainly that has changed now. So I wouldn't be surprised in the coming time that we also see a change with regard to graphite. We already see the Rio invested in a project in southern Africa. It's a combined titanium graphite project, but yeah, I think we will see some change there. So thank you. Let me just go on here. We'll have a few minutes left and there's more questions here. Battery chemistry is developing rapidly, particularly by Chinese companies. How is this affecting the graphite requirements for the new battery technologies? Yes, anodes. I think you're particularly thinking of the LFP batteries that are slowly probably overtaking NMC batteries. Both of them are lithium-based batteries, and both of them also employ graphite as the anode material. So I don't think that that's going to affect. In fact, it's probably just going to increase the quest for graphite. There are some other technologies that are being introduced these years, or not introduced, but are being sought to be developed. Toyota has recently announced that they are believing that they have a breakthrough or are near a breakthrough in terms of setting up or commercialization of solid-state batteries. Solid-state batteries don't use graphite as anodes. However, most experts are very skeptic about this. Maybe there is a breakthrough in terms of like being able to make batteries of the quality and also avoiding the relatively short lifetime that solid-state batteries have presently, because formation of dendrites and other things in the anodes. Most experts and analysts expect that this will mainly apply to, if it comes true that and happens, then it will mostly apply to high-end cars. So has relatively limited influence on the global demand for graphite. The predictions I've seen recently says something at up to 10% market share of solid-state batteries by 2033. So I don't think that that's a major threat. Also, one has to realize that it's not like these new technologies will replace, it's not like these new technologies are going to introduce like the possibility of having an electric car. They are replacing or seek to replace a well-functioning technology. So it has to be able to compete both with performance and price and everything, lifetime. So I think that is what the analysts at the moment are skeptic about. Is an ASX listing planned? Heavy dilution expected over time. Does it even make sense to invest early? There's a lot of questions here. That's not that's not allowed. I was about to say, okay. Anyway, is an ASX listing planned? There's no planned listing, second listing or anything. But as I said, we are considering. Heavy dilution expected over time. Does it even make sense to invest early? Absolutely, because what you as an investor should be worrying about is not your share of the company. The less that you hold, 30% and wants a board seat, you should mainly be worried about the share price, and that is bound to go up in the future when the world realizes the value of GreenRoc mining. So that should not hold you back. That obviously there will be some dilution when it comes to investments in the development in Greenland. Yes, we will need to raise funds, and therefore there will be dilution, the less that everybody follows their investments, of course. But then a significant value increase is also expected. So you should definitely hold on to your shares. That would be my advice. What impact would Grok's success have on Alba? I don't know. Alba is still a main shareholder, so obviously they would. Our success will spill over to them. Would GreenRoc consider buying back shares from Alba and thus bring liquidity to Alba in return for the shares? No, I don't think so. Certainly that has not occurred to me. I don't think that that's anything you would like to do. What we would do with the capital that we are raising is definitely putting into value by developing Amatok. Are you planning? I mentioned, answered that. So how is a Chinese government requirement? How is a Chinese government's requirement for export permitting affecting the graphite sector? We are yet to see. It's not that there are any real restrictions at the moment that are like exerted, but we can certainly see that that is now becoming a possibility by that you have to have a central approval of any kind of export. And we have seen before that the Chinese are quite happy to issue such restrictions. For instance, there's one issued over Sweden. So presently, Sweden can't buy graphite or battery-grade graphite products from China, which is quite thought-provoking, I think. What would happen to shareholders' security shares if GreenRoc would be taken over by a bigger company? I think that's a difficult one to answer. I don't think anybody would consider taking us over. GreenRoc has all the expertise that you could dream of with regard to operating in green. And why would anybody? And in fact, the companies that we've been talking to, or rather the potential investment partners, financial partners, they're not interested in taking a majority interest because they don't have the expertise, they don't understand, they don't have the technical expertise either. So I don't think that's a real threat. Am I going over time here?
No, Stefan, please do carry on.
Okay, good. After amitoc flotation, there are 3 more stages required to get to being anode ready. The price for the final stage is, I think, over $8,000 per ton. Are there if that is processing cost, that's not correct. But anyway, are there risks to these later stages in terms of know-how due to Chinese dominance of the processing? So, of course, there's some risk. That's also something we're looking into with the current feasibility study. But I don't think that it's a major one because, first of all, the actual spheronization is something which is it's a mechanical process that we can certainly that we understand relatively well. There are certain European manufacturers of units. We have been talking also to some Japanese companies that are experts in various stages of these processing, and I think that it's very likely that we could partner up with some of these. It's not all. There's a Chinese dominance, but they don't have the what should we say? They don't have a monopoly of the technical capabilities. I don't think current prospective shareholders appreciate how much value there is in downstream processing. Can the company be more explicit about this? Yes, we will try to be. It's just that I like to have a bit more background to speak about this. This is why we're now undertaking this feasibility study. There's no doubt that is a very as again I said, significant increase in value, therefore also a significant upside to the company. And we can see that the couple of projects that have been undertaken are that are under development now. I can mention one in North America. You can look up Graphite One in Alaska. You can look up Renascor in Australia. If you can see that there's a very significant value increase when you complete your feasibility study on the spheronization plant also. Certainly, You don't quote me on this, I was about to say, but there's definitely the NPV is going to be several times that of the mining operation itself. Is there any indication from the exploratory drilling that the upper graphite layer or lower graphite layer are thinning out in the untested directions? Yes, there is. The upper graphite layer seems to be thinning towards the north, and the lower graphite layer seems to be thinning towards the south. But then again, the lower graphite layer seems to be thickening also towards the north. So the last northernmost drill hole we drilled was 20 meters thick, true thickness of the ore. Is there a power line planned to site? How big of a challenge is that? What other infrastructure is needed? What about roads, shipping docks? Where will the workers live? The workers will live on Namitok. There'll be a 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off. A lot of them will be sourced in Greenland, is my hope, with the relatively limited amount of people employed there. Roads, no roads are needed really. Of course, a shipping dock, yes, there needs to be a pier so we can get smaller ships and barges up towards the Amitok. Other infrastructure, there's no power line planned. In fact, there is a potential for hydropower nearby, but I think within the timeline that we would like to see Amitok operating under here, I think that is probably not the solution. I think more likely that what will start out is a more like conventional diesel power plant that will be replaced as soon as possible, either replaced or supplemented by, for instance, wind turbines, replaced by similar generators but powered by not nitrogen, ammonia, which is being developed now for ship engines. So, and that's same technology as diesel engines, really, a bit more piping but otherwise it's a similar way, and that's power to X, which are also plans of establishing in Greenland. Can you accelerate the external dependencies like assessment and studies, given the increased urgency for Europe and US to be less dependent on China? It's really quite difficult to accelerate any of this. The only thing I will say is that, of course, we have a strong focus now on performance of the various things that we're doing. So nothing up to now has really held us back in any significant amount, a few months maybe, but it is something that is becoming increasingly important. So, and I think that the PA we're undertaking here, it had a bit of delay. There was some sickness with one of the experts, but we really undertook this. We had the competent person visiting in May, and we concluded the study here in October, which I think it's okay, because it's the first time. There's a lot of work to carry out to make the right mine design and so forth. So I think the PFS would be conducted in a timely fashion. Are the licenses being extended to over the roadmap? I don't understand that question. Sorry, I keep going here. In future fundraising rounds, will current private investors be allowed to participate at the same pricing T's and C's as institutional investors? That would certainly be the plan. I don't see why investors should be treated differently. They all have an interest in the company, and their money is worth the same. So yes, I would certainly strive to that. Can you explain the apparent discrepancy between the current market share and the potential project value? I think I mentioned that. Does the processing plant's capacity exceed the supply of graphite concentrate from GreenRoc mines? We will be, I think, looking at having a certain overcapacity here. I think the most likely scenario is that we are setting up a modular processing facility, so we can start out with, because also the graphite mine in Greenland is not going to have full production from year one. It's going to ramp up to full production over 2 years. So I think it makes sense to also increase production or processing capacity. But a modular design will mean that if the market is there and you make good money, then you also have the cash to invest in expanding that capacity as you go. Would it be a better option for the board to approach Tesla and be acquired so that Tesla can use its huge free cash flows to deliver the roadmap with fewer dependencies? Tesla needs huge amount of graphite for its Berlin gigafactory. I don't think that it might be a better option. I think what our priority is to make value for our shareholders, of course. If we see an offer that is so good that we need to pass it on to you guys, we'll definitely do so. But we are quite determined to carry on with the work and get Amitog up into production and set up that processing plant. What we'd really like to have is an offtake agreement with Tesla, of course, so they can call us anytime. We're talking, of course, to everyone, including a lot of the car manufacturers. Are all the mining licenses being extended to cover the roadmap? I don't understand the roadmap, so I can't really comment on that. Yeah, I don't know. We don't really have any roads planned except for maybe a small service road up to the tailings facility. I think that is all of the questions that are here. So
Perfect. Stefan, thank you very much for being very generous with your time there and addressed all those questions you can from investors. And of course, the company will review all the questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself, Stefan, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for attending this meeting again. I really enjoy being able to answer some of your questions. Shows that there's interest for us. Maybe I didn't answer them all to your satisfaction, but I certainly tried to. And I will make sure that you're also being kept informed about the developments of the company. And we are across the board, and the people that work for us here, we are striving towards making Amitog and GreenRoc Mining a good investment for all of you.
Perfect, Stefan. Thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close the session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of GreenRoc Mining PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.